It says connecting, and it says we are live.
There we go. And
Here we go.
live chat will appear here.
I love that. What's happening, folks? Yogi Roth here, Jim Thornby there. You should have gotten potentially an email. Yeah, we got some people joining right now, so this is awesome. This is the first time we've ever done this, Jim.
Yeah.
So
Thank you for joining the experiment.
Yeah, amen. This is why option. And as I referenced, that's Jim. I'm Yogi. This is the first time we've ever done this. It's really cool. Substack is releasing all these new tools to utilize within the platform. One of them is going live. So we're going to experiment over the course of the CFP run here with a lot of behind the paywall content, live content. I head to New York City for the Heisman later this week. So we'll do a little bit of everything, Jim. But I did think it was important for us to kind of come on together here, and we wrote about it yesterday. Check it out at whyoption.com. I think it's a fun article. We try to give about half of it for free, and the rest is for behind the paywall people in our community. We appreciate it. It's growing at a fun rate. But Jim, it really hit me. I was in Eugene, and I'm watching the playoff show. Nobody's talking about the Ducks, by the way, which we're going to get to because they're about to go on a run. But as I went to my favorite cafe, the Maracay Cafe in downtown Eugene, which is a staple, avocado toast, honey almond latte, like every time.
West Coast.
Yeah. Often twice, and the granola. I ordered that 2 times yesterday before 1 p.m. But I spent time with Dan Lanning, spent time with Rob Mullins, Nate, the whole crew in the athletic department. But as I got to the cafe, I went online. And the vitriol, the frustration, the sadness, the happiness, the elation, and the anger is what stood out. So I want us to talk about today, and we'll get to the Cal job, the UCLA job, like Stanford job. Like there's a lot going on in college football. Penn State, they just introduced Matt Campbell earlier today. Awesome. Love that. More Pennsylvania. He's a Pitt guy, by the way, at least for a little bit. Spent some time with the Pitt Panthers. So we got a lot of movement. Pat Fitzgerald, like we'll get to all that. But let's just talk about why is college football so angry right now? And as we promised 2 years ago, this is going to be thoughtful, insightful conversation. So we won't scream. We'll try not to, at least. Jim, I want to hear your thoughts because you man the controls better than anybody. I don't know how you got too many windows up. You see all the conversations, but why do you think college football is so angry?
Yeah, I've got a computer here, I got a computer here, and a computer here with way too many windows open right now. So anywhere where we want to go with this, I've got somebody's rankings or stats or what have you. But yeah, it's funny because here's what I think is the main problem. I see a lot of people. I've seen a lot of articles and things that's coming out today or even yesterday talking about the weekly college football playoff ranking show and how that operates. And let's be honest about it. It's an ESPN show. It's in their contract with the CFP that they have to do it. So it's both parties coming up with that. And there's the thought behind that now that I've seen from a lot of people that it sets bad expectations for people based on, well, this week it was this and this week it was that. And I get that. I get why people, if you're not paying super close attention to what's going on, that you might have that feeling about it. The one thing about the CFP that I like that it's different about the Associated Press poll is that it's not just, okay, well, this week they were ranked 11th and then they won. And so now we got to move them up one and, or this team moved down. Every week they start with a clean slate. For better or worse, they start with a clean slate every week. And so from that, I think, I saw the Notre Dame AD today come out and say they felt like they had been misled this whole time by the committee and by that. And I think, I feel like that there is almost too much read into what is said by those. I mean, the interviews that they have with the chairman every year at the end of that show, the chairman's whole job in that is to not put themselves in a box that they can't then, change when they get more information in. And every time they're asked a question about it, it's a hypothetical question. How will you respond to this? And then number one thing, we've presented for the Pac-12 the past several years to the committee. And the number one thing that we've presented for the Pac-12 the past several years to the committee. And the number one thing that we've presented for the Pac-12 the past several years to the committee. And the number one thing that we've presented for the Pac-12 the past several years to the committee. And the number one thing that we've presented for the Pac-12 the past several years to the committee. And the number one thing that we've presented for the Pac-12 the past several years to the committee. And the number one thing that we've presented for the Pac-12 the past several years to the committee. And the number one thing that we've presented for the Pac-12 the past several years to the committee. And the number one thing that we've presented for the Pac-12 the past several years to the committee. And the number one thing that we've presented for the Pac-12 the past several years to the committee. And the number one thing that we've presented for the Pac-12 the past several And it was always like, don't tell us about the hypothetical, what's going to happen. We don't care about what is still going to happen. It's about what has happened and how that all fits into there. So every time they're asked a hypothetical question about the future, he's got to kind of like just spin it into a way of, I'm not going to give you an answer that you're going to hold against me next week when we get more information and then the opinions change. I think that is like probably the biggest thing that people are angry about in college football is what the committee is telling you when they're trying not to really, commit to anything in that level.
Yeah, I think it's fair. And if you have questions in the chat, it's fun to kind of watch it populate with people. That's pretty cool. First time doing this here within this platform. And again, for those that just joined, we're talking about like, why is college football so angry right now? And Jim, your point, I think is well said of people feel like they were misled. Clearly Notre Dame feels like they were misled. I would agree. Like I would agree with that because I don't think it's commonly thought that every week they start from zero. And if it is commonly thought every week they start from zero, then are they looking at what just happened? Are they looking at the entire body of work every week? Like I heard something yesterday on the show of like, when the resume is complete, then they look at the whole body of work. And I thought that was an interesting thought because it didn't seem like it was true for everybody. That's which, how can it be? Like we're living in a world where the SEC has 8 conference games and Bama lost to Florida State to kick off the season, who we know had a tough year. They're not going to a bowl game. And then they had the best win of the year at Georgia. And then they beat an Auburn team who's inspired but not going to a bowl game with an interim head coach. And then they lose pretty badly in the SEC title game. So like that body of work versus like, let's just say BYU's 2 losses where they got drilled twice by the same team. How do you comp those bodies of work? I think that's like a hard thing to digest because there are just so many inequities. Thankfully, we'll all be at 9 conference games moving forward. Hopefully, we'll all be at a conference or a non-conference game that actually matters moving forward. That's another discussion too, as we're watching the narrative change around that. So I think you're right. I think that's why people were so angry. I think there's another thing why people are angry in college football, and I understand it. JMU, Bob Chesney, he'll be introduced as UCLA's new head coach in the Big Ten on Tuesday. Here we sit on Monday. They won on Friday night. They're going to the CFP. Tulane's going to the CFP. I think when this whole thing rolled out and it was the 5 highest ranked conference champions who get automatic qualifiers, everybody at the time was anticipating 5 power leagues. There's only 4, and no one ever thought that 2 conference champions from non-Big Ten, Big 12, ACC, SEC would ever get in. One felt like, yeah, we got to do that. And to me, I thought this is what struck me, and we wrote about it at yoption.com late last night, flying home from Eugene, was if you want to eliminate that, and I understand the point, Notre Dame is a much more talented team than either one of those 2 teams, in my opinion. Duke, I would argue, is more talented than those 2 teams who won the ACC. Virginia, you could argue, is more talented. Like, you can make that case, and I'm not here to argue that. But it was created so everybody felt like they had a chance. And I think if we see changes, remember last year we saw changes. There's all of a sudden strength of record was going to become a thing, which was great. Will there be changes because of upheaval this year and frustration and anger? Maybe, but if the change is to eliminate the 5 highest ranked conference teams getting in, or just putting a cap on one of them from the non-power 4s, I think we're looking a couple years down the line at a really slippery slope. I think we're looking at, okay, if that's eliminated, then we're cutting off 60 plus teams in college football from even mattering every week. And like, why cover them? Like, they're their own sport and maybe they have their own playoff. That is another conversation. In addition, if you cut that off, then I think the next step is, are you going to cut off the 60 plus teams that are in power conferences? And it's going to become the true 30-some team league and funded by some money from somewhere. And now like those teams pull their rights together and get the most amount of money in TV rights. And then we've just lost the fabric of college football. And I'm not here to say that the fabric of college football hasn't changed. It clearly has. But the reason so many people watch it and take their kids to games and paint their faces is because of the fabric of the game. And that I would be worried about if they made that change. And I hope they don't. I don't know the contracts. I won't pretend to know the contracts, and I won't read the contracts. But I just think it's important to note that, because I think it's easy to say, well, get them out. And I get it. And Boise, or the Pac-12 next year, like, they're going to probably get the AQ. Are they going to go win it all? It's hard to ever say that, that is ever going to happen, but to eliminate it in its entirety, I think would do a massive disservice.
Well, I mean, you talk about change. I mean, I'm wearing my Pac-12 pullover here from a
On
few years
purpose.
ago.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just right away there, it talks about it. But I mean, even if you looked at last year's format, Tulane would be one of the 4 buys.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So if you
Yeah.
think about that, and like, there's so many things where they talk about, like, oh, well, these G5 teams, they can't win it all. Okay, how many teams do you realistically think could win it all? I mean, is there more than 6? Is there,
Well,
that could
yeah, that's a
win
good
4
point.
games?
That's a good
And they're
point
like,
this
"Oh,
year.
well, they're gonna get blown out. Look at the point spreads from Vegas." Well, let's look at the point spreads from last year. The 4 first-round games, the average margin of victory, thank you, Tom Fornelli, for tweeting this out earlier, and I just double-checked it, 19.3 points per game was the
That was the
average.
spread?
The margin of victory at the end of the game. So
Wow.
who cares what the point spread was going in?
Got
And that 19.3, that's with the Notre Dame Indiana score being 27-17. Now remember, that game was 27-3 with 90 seconds left.
Yeah.
So Penn State won by 28. Texas won by 14. That game actually was probably a little like, that game felt competitive for most of that game, but Texas still won that game by 14. Ohio State obviously demolished Tennessee. And that's coming from the big bad SEC. Now, I think actually it's funny because I'm saying that I'm kind of in jest with Tennessee. I actually think the SEC is almost getting too much flack right now, because, people are hammering, how did Alabama get in? Like, I get it. The Florida State loss is bad. And yeah, they probably maybe should have been a little bit penalized more for what they did in the conference game. But if you look at their body of work is still good. They still have that win at Georgia. They still have the win over Vandy. Not that they're the greatest victories at all, but they're still wins over Missouri and Tennessee. When you actually just look at those types of things, they have it. Like, they're there. Like, I didn't have a problem with Alabama getting. I thought Alabama would get in. Part of it would be because they were the number 1 seed in the SEC going into the championship game. And it's hard to have I don't think it's a real argument what conference is the deepest right now. SEC is still that team. They don't have the quite elite team like they've had the last decade or so, up until the last 2 years, where those Georgia and Alabama teams were just absolute monsters. I mean, Georgia won the national championship game by 1 billion points over TCU. I mean, like, so, obviously there's going to be blowouts. I don't think you can legislate the sport based on that just to keep the G5 teams out. I think, to your point, that it's good for college football as a whole for these teams to be involved. It's good for these things to all have a sense of, hey, we still have a chance. It might be a very remote chance to get to this playoff, but they have a chance. Now, it's probably similar to a 16 seed in the men's basketball tournament. That they make it, they get to have their moment of being in there, and they didn't make it. Now you look at the teams that didn't make it, whether it's Notre Dame or Miami or Texas. You can't say that those teams didn't have their opportunities this year.
Yeah. You know what I wonder? I mean, I am a fan of playing games because I think it's great for the sport. I think that, like, I don't know this to be true, but I would bet if you took the 3 seed from every conference, meaning the team that didn't play for the conference championship game that made it to the playoff, they're all saying, we're glad we didn't play. We're glad we didn't play. I mean, look at Oregon. They're in the best seat humanly possible. I think Oregon's going to go play and take a run. They're going to play Indiana to have a chance to go to the national championship game. That's at least how my bracket is laid out right now. I think they'll win. They'll beat Texas Tech, and they'll play IU, who I think will beat Alabama. To that point, I look at these conference championship games and I think that the fair thing is to have a bunch of teams play that day and almost make it easier. And if we're going to expand it, I'm open to expand it. We heard the Notre Dame AD reference expanding it. I like that idea because I think whether it was Tulane or JMU or Ole Miss in the Egg Bowl, like you name it, like the intrigue late in the season was awesome. I mean, I called Iowa USC. It was a play-in game. We had like SC Oregon was a play out game. Washington, Oregon could have been that if UW beat Wisconsin, but it was for Oregon to a degree, at least as that's what we thought heading to that weekend. So I think the expansion is going to be a great thing if it comes to be, or play-in games. And I say that because I think the season's so long. Like all the coaches I'm talking to, and you know that the Mar Vista Venice Beach headquarters is on fire right now, talking to coaches every day. My wife is so annoyed with me.
Vibrating as we speak.
So annoyed. But there is a common thread of like the season's so long. And I think that, all the chaos is another reason of why people are angry. I had talked to a head coach yesterday on my drive, and the conversation was about when the games ended, here came the dark cloud over the sport. And the portal isn't open now, but it's on the verge and deals are being done. Coaches obviously were fired. I mean, heck, we had signing day last week, midweek, the same day that like all conference team in the Big Ten was being announced. Like so much is happening at once that you're just, I feel like that's why a reason why so many people are angry. Like there's so much happening. I think it's like a small glimpse of like what's happening in the world, which is for another network and another podcast. But there's so much happening that people are just angry. And I think that's become a default. And I think that it's almost like we don't know it. It's like we don't realize we're addicted to our phones and our dopamine our hits are coming through. It's the same thing in sport or lots of things in life. There's very rarely the benefit of the doubt being given. And that's why I think I think there will be changes, Jim, whether it's the CFP and the committee and the decisions within those rooms, whether it's only allowing one group of 5 team in, or whether it's expansion. I mean, there's a couple weeks here before a decision has to be made that can be done immediately. My brain says January 22nd, but you would probably know better than me.
Moving the deadline. So like
okay.
the deadline is already passed once, and
okay.
I think we're on borrowed time right now.
Okay. Well, good. Like take your time, but like no one's going to agree that like it's good for Ole Miss that Lane is gone. Nobody's going to agree that it's good for teams that the quarterback is already saying he's going to enter the transfer portal. Like this could and should be entertaining, much like and very akin to the NFL. So who's to get over the most? It's the academic side, which is also probably angry that schools are paying hundreds of thousands of dollars in collected buyouts. There's a great article in The Athletic about the $300 million that was exchanged based on James Franklin being fired, whether it was guys getting a raise or leveraging to better jobs or buyouts. Like it's amazing when you think of that. So I understand even the academic side saying, whoa, hold up, man. Like this is higher education. We're not changing the calendar. And I'm here to say like, that is where we need to also like recognize it's no longer the 2019, let alone when I played in 2004. Like it's just totally different. And I'd also urge people to like try to stay steady as much as you can. Like I get Notre Dame being frustrated, but opting out of the bowl game, it felt like it was a knee jerk. And I understand that there's so much that goes into it, or K-State opting out because you don't have your coach. God, it would have been nice to see Coach Kleiman like finish it off in a bowl game. And I don't know the details of all that. Or Iowa State, I get you lost your head coach. But I think in 2 weeks' time, I know I wish I'd play in another game. I don't know many players that don't. So let me just finish with this, Jim. Mac Brown came on our podcast about five years ago. I think it's 2019, 6 years ago. And he said, college football is about the players and the fans. And it's become about the media and the money. And I think that can never be more probably accurate than it is today.
Yeah. And you mentioned the expansion, and I have some feelings on that because, that seemed to be everybody's fix to what happened. Oh, well, let's just expand it to 16. Okay. So now all you're doing is changing the teams that you're arguing about. You're no longer, you're no longer arguing about Notre Dame, Miami, BYU. Now you're arguing about USC, Michigan, Arizona, whoever.
Utah. Yeah.
Yeah, Utah. I didn't mean to slight them by any stretch,
Don't do
but like,
that. Don't do
yeah,
that.
exactly. I know my lesson on that one. But like, it's just to me, the only reason you expand is that you are then adding in all the conference champions.
Yeah.
Does that mean now that all of these higher end seeds are getting easy games the first one? Sure, but that's also how the NCAA the basketball tournament works, and like you kind of build it. You've earned that reward of getting a game. I mean, at this point, it would then be, if you're expanding, it would be a home game. You're not no longer getting that bye; you're getting a home game. Um, but I think unless you're adding that in, I don't think we need to expand just to add in more Power Four schools that got left out.
Yeah.
Now,
What do you think about like
maybe that comes with it as long with alongside of it. But I think just to do that, I think is just adding just to add.
what do you think of the plan model? Like now that we've had a season and chaos to digest it, Commissioner Tony Petitti presented that as an option. There's a couple different models out there. But the last week of the season, basically the conference handling who they think should be presented for the at-large spots in the committee is generally the best way to say it.
I think it would take a fundamental restructuring of the entire sport.
Yeah.
Not that that's a bad thing necessarily, but the amount of heavy lifting to get everybody on board to do that, because then what are you doing with the conference championship games? I mean, they become the playing games? The networks are then going to have a say in this because they've paid these conferences a ton of money to do this. So, like, are they going to want to be involved with this? It's tough because each conference has their own different TV contract that
Okay, so
ends.
take that out because you're talking about the media and the money. Take that out. I think, and that's the point. Like that's
Yeah.
why I think people are also angry because everybody's getting paid in this thing, and there's so much money and so much involved. And again, I don't even want to. I'll never even open up that PDF to look at any of those contracts. But I say, like, again, like how great is ball? Like what is the best for the game? I think it is. I think if you added another game and everybody got to play, all right, here we go. 1 and 2 get a bye, and if it's in like Indy in the Big Ten, or if it's in Dallas and it's what it would be 2 versus 3, and then however you wanted to break your bracket up, to have the game. I think it's better for the game. I think the more games are better for the game, and I think there'll be then more TV partners for the game. And I don't want to. I mean, here I go right into the media and the money again.
But then, so here my question is then, I mean, I'm actually surprised by, I didn't love the format, but what I will say is I was surprised that the ACC and Big 12 didn't say yes right away,
Look where they
because
sit now.
that format was guaranteeing 2 teams for both of those conferences. And now that is definitely not the case. So like I think there's a little bit of maybe not knowing who you are in the structure of things, and not realizing that these other 2 conferences have, for fair reasons or not, pulled away from everyone else.
Yeah.
And that's the honest reality. I don't like it, but that's the honest reality. And then with that playing structure, how do these group of 5 teams then get into this flow of it? Are they still going to have their own conference championship games because that's good for their bottom line? And then do those conference champions then have playing games against each other? Almost like the old bracket busters that they have in college basketball, where it's like, oh, this conference and this conference, I'll put these 2 teams together and throw it to, what have you. So I think there's what I've seen specifically in this sport is nothing moves quickly. Everything, like, that was one of the most, probably more frustrating things for me in working on a conference level, was like everything has so many levels of red tape that you have to get through. Like, okay, like we have this cool idea. Now it has to get approved by this committee, and then has to get voted on here, and then get voted on there and voted on here. And that's just within your own conference. Never mind getting all of these other conferences on board to doing something of the same ilk. So I think,
True.
how do we get I mean, people say, "Oh, we need a commissioner," but like the commissioner is only as good as his powers. Like, what is it? Who's the NFL commissioner's boss? The 32 owners. The NFL commissioner does what the NFL owners tells him to do, and that's why he gets paid as much money as he does.
Yeah. There's a lot to it. Okay, so let's net out with this. The playoff is set. The playoff is set. There's a lot that's intriguing about it. You said earlier, like how many teams could win it. I think from last year to this year, I think there's more teams that can go on a run. Like John Mateer, can he and Ben Arbuckle get this offense humming? Maybe. They've struggled, but maybe. Can Alabama look like the team that went to Georgia? Sure. Well, I mean, Ole Miss, I'm so curious. Like that's the one that like probably has upset written all over it, even though I'm going to pick Miami over A&M in my old bracket here and Alabama over Oklahoma. But like, I don't see those as upsets like Tulane taking down a team from the SEC, playing them for the second time. I'll give you my bracket. I'd be curious yours. I got Bama winning, Oregon winning, and then I have I'd love to see Tulane do it, but I don't think they will. And I have Miami. That is the one upset that I do see that I guess at Bama seeding wise an upset. I got Ohio State winning, Georgia winning, Indiana winning, Oregon winning, and then I think that Oregon, Indiana in a semi, Georgia, Ohio State in a semi, and anybody can out of those. I think it'd be awesome. Any of them could just be epic.
Yeah, and I agree with you there in the first round that that Miami is obviously the easy one to pick because it's the close one. What A&M team are you getting? Are you even within certain games?
Yeah,
A&M
fourth quarter.
is two different teams. Like I remember watching that. Who was it? That was the game prior to Texas when A&M was down 30 points at halftime. Yeah. And like it was like, okay, like they're done, they're cooked, whatever. And then they come, Marcel Reed had an awful first half, had an amazing second half, and then here they go, they're back in it. But I just obviously A&M had the win at Notre Dame, which is a great win for them. But they didn't play anybody in their own conference. Like Texas was the only team that they really played. Like, and that's
two
the
teams
problem.
Going to a bowl.
That's the problem with these conferences getting bigger and bigger, is that it's impossible for you to play even anywhere near as many teams as you should in the conference to really get a sense of who are the good teams in the conference. And then you get that forces these crazy tiebreakers. And as someone has had to do the tiebreakers for a conference in the past, dude, there is no good answer on there. I know some people say, "Oh, you just got to use the CFP," but that also like creates some logistical issues involved with that as well, where you don't know who's going to play in your conference championship game until a few days beforehand. If you're using that last poll, some conferences are like, "Oh, well, no, we use the one before that." And I'm like, okay, well, what happens when you have games that weekend? There's no good answers.
No.
The problem is the conferences have gotten so big that it makes it nearly impossible to kind of shuttle all through those. But I think like, the way my brain, I'm thinking like, what is the most chaotic situation there? Imagine if just like last year, the 4 teams that got the bye all lose. I mean, last year, it was such a quick reaction to it because they felt like those weren't the best teams that they lost. Now, what happens this year when they think that those are the best teams and they all get beat in that round? I'm not saying that that's going to happen by any stretch of the imagination. Maybe we'll get 1 or 2 of those, but there's always the chance that we overreact to a very small sample size of information.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting point on all of these teams that have the bye is they all played in their conference championship game. I had this conversation with Dan Lanning yesterday, and the interview it already aired on Big Ten Network. I said, last year they had 25 days from conference title game to Rose Bowl, and we saw obviously what happened in that game. And I said, this year it's going to be 21 days from final regular season game to first round of the CFP. And he's like, yeah, I tweaked some things. Like the lessons were learned from last year. I was so curious if a team like Oregon got a bye. because a team that didn't play in a conference championship game. Now you're adding another 10 days on top of that, another 12, 14 days on top of that. Like, that would have been wild in terms of the amount of time. I think what's fascinating about this year is that you play the 1st, and then you play the 8th or the 9th, and then you play the 19th. Like, I remember when Washington and Michigan played for the championship, they flew back home, and then like on Wednesday of that week, so I think they played Sunday. Wednesday of that week, they had to come on back to do all the media availability. So I'll be curious that part. We'll be covering it. I'm going to do the Rose Bowl Media Day coverage. So that'll be Indiana at the Rose Bowl, which would be awesome for the fans, and Bama or Oklahoma. So we'll see like the impact of that specifically on the winner of Bama and Oklahoma in terms of coming out early and having to do all these media things, because they're still trying to treat it like a bowl, even though it's really just a playoff game. And that's going to be to talk about things eliminating. I could see that over time eliminating it, because there's just not enough time to really prepare or get healthy. So maybe one of those things that it's on the back page of things changing. Okay, let's just tap in here, and thank you, Thomas. That was awesome for the note, and everybody else. We appreciate you here. Let's just talk about the changes, like the literal changes that have happened or will happen at the top. Number 1, Tim Skipper, Carter Henderson, Cal Poly. We want some swag back here in Jim's office. Go Mustangs. I love that for him. In addition, Cal hires Tosh Lupoy. I just think there's something beautiful when you get to go back home. It doesn't happen that often, but when it does, it's powerful. Will Stein, he goes back home, a place he grew up watching. His dad played at Kentucky, Louisville. I would argue dream jobs. He got one of his dream jobs opportunities, both coming off a Dan Lanning staff. Same thing with Kenny Dillingham a couple years ago. Think about that. You go work at Oregon, you kick out as a head coach at your dream job. They're 3 for 3. And I love what Coach Lanning said a couple weeks ago. It was like, he wants his legacy to be his coaching tree, and it's beginning, which is really cool to watch. So that's a big deal. Bob Chesney gets announced on Tuesday, which is tomorrow, here in LA at UCLA. Penn State referenced earlier. That was a really cool press conference. I don't know if you had a chance to watch it. Matt Campbell, one-time Pitt guy before he went to, I think, Mount Union. I called some Iowa State games in my past. Well, he should have been one of the first calls for Penn State. They're lucky they landed here. He's awesome. Pennsylvania guy coming back home. He was tearing up talking about coming back to a place he knew so well in Pennsylvania. And even though he grew up in nearby Ohio, but he had grandparents and relatives in PA. So I thought that was cool. Pat Fitzgerald, he replaces Jonathan Smith. And I loved how Jonathan was honored on his way out. I've talked to members of his staff since that transition happened. And Pat Fitzgerald has been nothing but phenomenal from everyone that I've talked to. So excited for him. He kind of is a fit, right? Michigan State, like you could see him being there. And then finally, let's go to Oregon State, and they bring in somebody who we've known for a long time in Jamarcus Shepard. He comes from Alabama, previously at Washington, and just hearing him, you just feel the excitement and passion he has. Again, getting a job is so hard, folks. It's so hard to get these jobs. And then finally, we got Wazoo, which is open. So, remembered all those names. I don't know how.
Colorado State, Jim Mora, too. I don't think.
Yeah, Jim Mora. Love that. And Stanford, Tavita Pritchard, like coming back home. Like, it doesn't get any better than that. Wazoo's still open. I'm curious where your head goes and maybe your heart goes, and maybe they're in the same place, maybe they're not, around Washington State. I'm going to take a breath, and we'll kind of finish up on thoughts here on the coaching carousel.
Yeah, well, first two quick things quickly on what you said. One, with Tosh, like, you get the job and immediately is like, cancel everything else. I'm flying to Hawaii and talking to Jaron. Jaron says he's coming back again next year. So job number 1 already done at Cal, making sure you have your stud quarterback coming back. 2, with the Matt Campbell, you said he should have been his first call. I saw something, and I believe it was from actually a legitimate reporter. So I'll roll with it, but with a little bit of question there, that they had called him, or they called his agent. Penn State had called his agent, but it was an old agent, and it was a old phone number or something to that effect. So they didn't get a hold of him. I don't know. It was something really weird on that. So like, that's why that there wasn't more. That could be spin. That could be whatever. But it was funny that, like, to your point, like, oh, that should have been his first call. And yeah, maybe that was one of his first calls, but it's a little weird story there. But as far as Washington State, like, I think it was gutting, because it's such a short tenure there, and the wounds are still fresh from Coach Dickert leaving for Wake Forest. Now, obviously, that worked out great for Coach Dickert. He had a great turnaround with Wake Forest this year. They were not
Extension.
one of the 18 teams that were tied for second place in the conference. Uh, exaggerate there, obviously, but I mean they were right below that. They had some good wins this year over some of those teams that were tied in that mix. So I think that's part of it. Like it's just so fresh, and I think Washington State has just been through so much in these last few years with all the different coaching news, the conference news, what have you. In some ways, hopefully this will be a chance for them to really swing for the fences with a guy that maybe say like, hey, I see what the Pac-12, what the Pac-12 is doing, where it's going, and I can kind of be the guy to help lead that. I've seen some interesting names in the mix for that, whether that's Chip Kelly, whether that's Rick Neuheisel bringing Jerry along with him as kind of like a, coach in waiting and kind of him, the, father-son mentorship. I've seen some interesting things regarding around that, which I'm curious how all that would work out. But, it's funny because I remember when first coming to the Pac-12 in 2012, as an Arizona alum, I'm there to, I want to do this for my school, blah, blah, blah. Within a few months, it's like, okay, I'm really like on board with all 12 of these schools to the point where like I'm watching some random Washington State game. I think it may have been playing Auburn in a non-conference game or something. I'm screaming at the TV, and my wife walks through and she goes, "What are you screaming about?" I'm like, "Washington State, blah, blah, blah." She goes, "Washington State?" I'm like, "Yeah, like I'm all in. Like, I'm drinking. I am officially drinking the Kool-Aid. A couple months into the job, and I still feel it. I still wear this this logo from time to time because I still invested so much in that, and I want those people to succeed. So I'm really hoping that they find someone who not only is the right person for that, but someone who's going to be there. Who knows what long-term means anymore in this industry, but for at least a few years to help really kind of churn this back the other direction.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one thing that we all have to wrap our heads around. Maybe that guy you quoted earlier on his tweets who gave you the 19.3 points per game will tell you how many years coaches are averaging at their job. Like you think of Chris Peterson, you think he was at Washington for 20 years. I think he was there 6 seasons, maybe 7.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's the world we're in. If Jerry Neuheisel gets the job, who I would be happy to support, I'm already going to host the Cougs event coming up in March. Like whoever's going to be the head coach, we're doing an interview and it'll be right here on this platform afterwards. It'd be awesome if it was Jerry or Rick or Chip or Justin Wilcox or like you name the name that's been floated out there. But to think that they're going to be there for a decade, folks, it's just not reality. It's not reality from the burnout level that coaching provides. It's not reality from the money that will be provided if you find success. It's not reality from the pressure to win now, or if you don't have success, you will get ousted. It's just the truth. So whoever you get, like hope it's for 4 years and it's a full recruiting cycle. And you'd be lucky if it was 5. Like that's like where my head is on all of these jobs now. Like, you win early, like Jake Dickert won his first year. He just got a big extension, which was awesome. Like he deserved it. Does that take him out of jobs that will open up next year? Let's just say 3 jobs open up in the Big Ten. He's a Midwest guy. Doubt it. So I just think that it's a sad truth to where we sit. Like, unless you sign an insane 10-year deal for $100 million, which some have. Okay, now you're stuck with that. We would think, right? But Jimbo Fisher being paid out showed us that that's not necessarily always the truth, or James Franklin being paid what he got paid. So we'll see. I think that for the Cougs, it's a really appealing job, just like Colorado State was. Like we didn't talk about Coach Moore that much. He took the Colorado State job, and I think a lot of people were up in arms. Like, why would he leave UConn, who he's navigated to unprecedented heights since I was a player? And right afterwards when they went to the Fiesta Bowl with I'm blanking on their head coach. Who ended up going to Maryland for a little while. You know what I'm talking about. Randy Edsall.
Yeah.
Like his first stint at UConn was just magnificent, right? And I just say that for Jim, like I think Colorado State's a better job than UConn because of the path to the playoff. And then you gotta you have to put into the evaluation of things we don't know, which is like lifestyle, living in Colorado Springs, playing in the Pac-12, being a veteran coach. Like you look at this league real quick and you're like, ooh, it's kind of fun. Like look at all these coaches, right? A lot of them are notable names for other jobs, or they're new guys that came on back. It may be a hell of a league in terms of the X's and O's side of it. So the Cougs have to evaluate that. Like I saw Luke Falk threw his name out there, which is kind of fun, just to kind of have some fun with that. But it'll be a big hire, and there's a lot of models. You can do the Rick Neuheisel, and I love Rick, and it would be awesome. He's been around a lot of programs. He's got a lot of insight. I'm always going to root for broadcasters to get head jobs because that's going to help me out in 20 years when I'm banging on the door begging for a job somewhere. But overall, like he wasn't just killing it at JMU like Kurt Signetti was. Like it's to comp these things, it is different. So do you go young and hungry like you just with Jimmy Rogers? Sure, go for it. But if you do well, look out. Like it's just going to be the truth. You get somebody with those ties. Somebody called me this morning. Actually, it was a Wazoo former player. They were like, what about Bo Baldwin? And I was like, oh, I get it because of his success at Eastern Washington. Like he's in Canada, I think, coaching now in the CFL, but didn't have great success at some of his other stops. So I think it's a challenging debate, but you got to make it a place that's going to be attractive to recruits. And I think personally, my last note here, Wazoo, whoever they hire, I think you got to get back to recruiting, call it the original Pac-12 footprint. I think there was a shift towards, I don't even know what you want to call like the Dakotas and Minnesota. And it was like, let's go get some of these big linemen that are going to North Dakota State and Montana State. And I think I understand that, but I also know like the roots of it. There's ties and there's a pride down here, especially where I sit in Southern California. So I would kind of take a push there, especially with where NIL is going. So we'll see. They're not rushed. That's the one thing. Like you're really not rushed. You got to get it done, obviously, before the holidays because of the portal opening up on the 2nd. I'm sure a bunch of players will follow Jimmy Rogers. So it'll be a total rebuild, but I don't think you have to like make the hire tomorrow.
And one of the funnier coaching notes of the weekend was with Virginia Tech. With they started the season 0-3. They fired Brent Pry as head coach. They go through the majority of the season. Then right at the end of the season, they hire James Franklin. And what does James Franklin do? He brings Brent Pry back as his DC. I mean, so it's just like I don't think I've ever seen that before, where a head coach is fired one year and is then brought back as an assistant on that same, on the next staff. So it just goes to show you just never count anything out when it comes to these coaching decisions that you're going to see, because people are going to do what they need to do.
Yeah. So let's end on that. Actually, I thought I saw that and I was like, you know what? Good for both Brent Pry and the administration of like having the humility to go do what made the most sense. And I think to that point, let's end with this. Like the best teams are going to continue to think outside the box. And I think that's like where Wazoo can go now. It's where a lot of these schools can go and start to think a little differently because the sport is going to continue to pivot and shift. So how do you navigate that? I think I think it's fascinating. And we could keep going on that. We'll put a bow on this one. If you like this, let us know. Thanks for the comments. Let us know what you think at yoption.com. I'm going to New York for the Heisman. Maybe we'll do another one of these on Saturday night. Post Heisman, I'll let you know who I voted for at least. And obviously we'll have some thoughts and sounds and tidbits from whomever ends up winning and hoisting that trophy and giving a magnificent speech. If it's Fernando Mendoza, it'll be magnificent. If it's Diego Pavia, it'll be, it'll be something, like whatever. Like, who knows how this thing will shake out. But thank you all for joining and thanks for testing this thing out. We'll see if we keep leaning into it. It was fun, Jim.
Yeah, now that we actually know how this works, we can give a little more heads up as well, because we wanted to make sure we actually knew what we were doing here with this. But hey, we just went 45 minutes. Good conversation. So thank you for joining, and Yokes, thanks for doing this, bro.
Okay, we'll try to turn it off and then not lose it all. So we'll see how that goes. All right, later, everybody.
Thanks, guys.